First contact in the deep. The Mariana Trench wasn't supposed to have bioluminescence at this depth. Dr. Sarah Chen frowned at the readings on her submersible's display, adjusting the external cameras to focus on the strange, pulsing light emanating from a crevice 35,000 feet below the surface. After 3 years of deep-sea research missions, she thought she'd seen every form of marine life the Hadal Zone had to offer. She was wrong. The light didn't behave like any bioluminescent creature she'd encountered. Instead of the typical blue-green glow, this illumination shifted through impossible colors, some she couldn't even name. The beam cut through the endless darkness like a prismatic searchlight, creating patterns that seemed almost deliberate. "Control, are you seeing this?" Sarah's voice crackled over the comm system. The Nautilus research vessel floating 7 miles above maintained a tenuous connection to her tiny craft. The Deepfinder. "Affirmative, Dr. Chen. Spectral analysis is inconclusive. Whatever's generating that light isn't using any known biological mechanism." Sarah guided the Deepfinder closer, her heart pounding. The submersible's titanium hull groaned under the immense pressure, but she trusted the engineering. She'd helped design it specifically for these depths. As she approached, the light patterns changed, becoming more erratic, almost like it was responding to her presence. The crevice widened into a small cavern, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Suspended in the water was a crystalline structure roughly the size of a small car. Its surface was faceted like a gemstone, but the facets shifted and realigned themselves continuously, creating those impossible light patterns. This was no natural formation. "Control, I'm looking at what appears to be. I don't even know how to classify this. It's clearly artificial, but nothing like this should exist down here. Nothing we've built could survive this pressure." As if in response to her words, the crystal structure pulsed brightly. A wave of dizziness washed over Sarah, and suddenly her mind was filled with images, mathematical equations, star charts, and a sense of desperate urgency. The message was clear. This was no natural phenomenon. She was making first contact with something that had been waiting in Earth's deepest reaches for a very, very long time. "Control, I'm..." Sarah's voice trailed off as another wave of images flooded her consciousness. She saw vast spaces between stars, felt the cold of interstellar travel, and understood that whatever this entity was, it had crossed light years to reach Earth, but not as an explorer or conqueror. It was running from something. The crystal structure's light dimmed suddenly, and Sarah noticed hairline fractures spreading across its surface. The immense pressure was taking its toll. The entity was injured, dying. Without thinking about the implications or the risks, Sarah maneuvered the Deepfinder closer. The submersible's mechanical arms were designed for collecting geological samples, but they might be able to help. "Dr. Chen, your proximity alerts are redlining. Strongly advise you pull back to a safe distance." Sarah ignored the warning. The entity was trying to communicate again, but its messages were growing weaker. She couldn't let this moment slip away. Humanity's first contact couldn't end in death at the bottom of the ocean. With precise movements, she extended the submersible's arms, trying to stabilize the fracturing crystal structure. The moment the mechanical manipulators touched the entity's surface, Sarah's mind exploded with information. She saw a vast network of similar crystalline beings spread across the galaxy, standing guard over something ancient and terrible. She understood that Earth had been chosen as a safeguard, its deepest ocean trench serving as a prison for forces that could never be allowed to escape. The entity was a sentinel, the last of its kind in this sector of space, and now it was dying, leaving its sacred duty unfulfilled. Unless... Sarah's hands flew over the controls, using the Deepfinder's arms to carefully shift the crystal structure to a more stable position. "Control, I need an emergency team prepped and ready. We're bringing something back to the surface, and it's going to change everything we think we know about the universe." The crystal pulsed once more, and Sarah felt gratitude wash over her. But underlying that gratitude was fear, not of death, but of what would happen if its mission failed. As the deep fender began its slow ascent, Sarah realized she wasn't just saving a dying alien entity. She was inheriting its responsibility, becoming part of something far greater and more terrifying than she could imagine. The darkness of the Hadal Zone seemed to press in around them as they rose, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something else was watching their ascent, something that had been waiting millennia for the Sentinel to fail. She only hoped she'd made the right choice in intervening, because if the entity's final messages were true, the fate of far more than Earth hung in the balance. The voice below. The quarantine lab aboard the Nautilus hummed with tension. Sarah watched through triple-pane glass as the crystalline entity floated in a pressurized tank, its light patterns more stable now, but still worryingly dim. The specialized containment unit had been designed for deep-sea microorganisms, not alien artifacts, but it was the best they could manage. "Talk to me," Sarah whispered, pressing her hand against the cool glass. Since their ascent from the trench, the entity's communications had grown sporadic, like a radio signal fighting through interference. But now, alone in the lab at 3 a.m., she felt its presence brush against her mind once more. This time, the images came with greater clarity. Sarah saw vast cities of crystal, worlds where thought and light were one and the same. She understood that the entity, which called itself the Resonator, was part of an ancient network of guardians. They had sealed away something that had nearly destroyed their civilization eons ago, something that fed on consciousness itself. Earth's oceans hadn't been chosen by accident. The immense pressure of the Mariana Trench helped contain the threat, while the planet's abundant water acted as a natural dampener for its psychic emanations. The Resonator had been stationed here for millennia, maintaining the seal and watching for any signs of deterioration. But now the seal was weakening. Sarah's hands trembled as she recorded her observations. The Resonator showed her glimpses of what lay beneath, a writhing mass of void-black tentacles and impossible geometries, a collective consciousness that devoured all others, absorbing them into its ever-expanding hive mind. If it broke free, Earth would be only the beginning. "Dr. Chen." The voice made her jump. Dr. Marcus Webb, the Nautilus's chief engineer, stood in the doorway. "The preliminary analysis you requested. You're going to want to see this." The data confirmed her worst fears. The readings they'd taken at the trench site showed growing instability. The ancient seal was failing, and the Resonator was too damaged to repair it alone. "How long?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "At the current rate of deterioration, 3 days, maybe 4. The Resonator pulsed urgently, and Sarah's mind filled with new images, schematics, calculations, impossibly advanced theories about the nature of consciousness and reality itself. The entity was trying to teach her, prepare her for what needed to be done. "We need to contact the surface," Sarah said. "Get me a secure line to Naval Command." "You know they'll want to take control of the situation," Marcus warned. "Once the military gets involved, we don't have a choice. What's coming is beyond anything we can handle alone." But first, Sarah turned back to the Resonator, placing both hands on the tank. "Show me everything. Show me how to save our worlds." The entity's light engulfed her consciousness, and Sarah Chen began to understand the true weight of being a sentinel. The fate of 2 civilizations now rested in her hands, and time was running out. Rising darkness. The first tremor hit at 300 hours. Sarah felt it through the deck plates of the Nautilus, a deep, subsonic vibration that made her teeth ache. The Resonator's light pulsed frantically, its patterns a desperate warning. "All hands, battle stations," Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Chen to the bridge immediately." The ship's monitors showed chaos erupting across the Pacific. Seismic activity centered on the Mariana Trench had triggered tsunami warnings from Japan to California. But Sarah knew this was no natural earthquake. The seal was beginning to crack. Through her strengthening connection with the Resonator, Sarah sensed the ancient horror stirring below. Its consciousness was vast and alien, a collective intelligence that had consumed countless civilizations before the crystal beings had finally contained it. "We have to go back down," Sarah announced to the bridge crew. "The resonator has shown me how to reinforce the seal, but we'll need to modify the deep fender first." The next 6 hours were a blur of desperate preparation. Sarah's mind, enhanced by the resonator's knowledge, guided Marcus and his engineering team in retrofitting the submersible with crystalline technology. They converted the sample collection arrays into resonance amplifiers, capable of channeling the same energy the Sentinel beings used to maintain the seal. But even as they worked, the situation deteriorated. The tremors grew stronger. Coastal cities began evacuating. And worse, Sarah could feel the entity below becoming more active, its psychic tendrils prodding upward through the weakening barrier. "The modifications are ready," Marcus reported. "But Dr. Chen, the pressure readings at depth are off the charts. The deep fender wasn't designed for this." "Neither was I," Sarah replied, securing herself in the pilot's seat. "But sometimes we have to exceed our design specifications." The descent was a nightmare. The ocean itself seemed to resist them, currents twisting in impossible ways as they approached the breach site. Through the resonator's enhanced senses, Sarah could perceive the entity's growing awareness of their presence. It recognized them as a threat. At 30,000 feet, the first tentacle of void black energy lashed out from the trench wall. Sarah barely managed to evade it, but the near miss left frost patterns across the hull and sent sharp pains through her mind. "It's trying to get into our heads," she warned the surface. "Everyone up there needs to reinforce their mental defenses, just like we practiced." At 35,000 feet, they finally saw it. A tear in reality itself, rimmed with crystalline structures that were rapidly failing. Through the gap, something vast and dark pulsed with malevolent intelligence. The fate of 2 civilizations would be decided in the next few minutes, and Sarah Chen was humanity's only hope of survival. The final depth. Sarah's hands flew across the deep fender's controls, activating the modified resonance amplifiers. The crystalline technology hummed to life, creating a protective field around the submersible as another void tendril lashed out. Through their shared consciousness, the resonator guided her movements. The ancient seal had been maintained by a network of sentinels, but now Sarah would have to channel that same power alone. Her mind burned with the strain as she directed the amplifier's energy toward the breach. The entity retaliated immediately. Images of consumed worlds flooded Sarah's consciousness, civilizations that had fallen to its endless hunger. She saw billions of minds merged into its collective, their individuality dissolved into its vast, dark intelligence. Hull integrity at 62%, the computer warned. Depth pressure exceeding design limitations. Sarah ignored the warnings, pushing deeper. The resonator's light pulsed in sync with her heartbeat now, their energies merging into something new. Neither fully human nor crystal, but a hybrid consciousness capable of wielding the Sentinel's power. The void entity sensed their intent. Its attacks grew desperate, reality warping around them as it tried to break through. Each blast of dark energy left frost patterns across the hull and sent daggers of pain through Sarah's mind. "We're losing structural integrity," Marcus radioed from above. "You need to pull back." "Not yet," Sarah gritted through clenched teeth. The resonator showed her the final sequence, a complex pattern of energy that would reinforce the seal. But completing it would require more power than the crystals alone could generate. Sarah made her choice. She opened her mind fully to the resonator, allowing their consciousnesses to merge completely. The pain was extraordinary as her human brain tried to contain knowledge and awareness meant for crystalline matrices. But it worked. The amplifiers blazed with impossible light as Sarah channeled power through both human and alien neural pathways. The void entity screamed in frequencies that shattered sensors and made the ocean itself vibrate. The seal began to reform, crystalline structures growing and interconnecting across the breach. Sarah felt her consciousness stretching, splitting between her human body and the growing crystal matrix. She was becoming part of the seal itself. "Sarah," Marcus's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Your vital signs are critical. You need to disconnect." But she couldn't stop. Not until the seal was complete. Not until Earth was safe. The void entity made its final assault, throwing all its psychic force against their defenses. For a moment, Sarah felt her identity beginning to fragment under the onslaught. But then something unexpected happened. She felt other minds joining with hers, supporting her. The crew of the Nautilus, the naval personnel monitoring from shore, even civilians from coastal cities who had unconsciously sensed the psychic battle. Humanity was fighting back, their collective will adding strength to the seal. With this final surge of power, Sarah completed the sequence. The crystal matrix flared with blinding light, and the breach slammed shut with such force that it triggered earthquakes across the Pacific plate. When it was over, Sarah found herself floating in darkness, unsure if she was still fully human. Parts of her consciousness were now woven into the seal, merged with the resonator's crystal matrix. She had become Earth's first true sentinel. The Deep Finder's emergency protocols engage, automatically beginning its ascent. As they rose through the lightless depths, Sarah felt the weight of her new existence. She was no longer just a marine biologist. She was humanity's guardian against horrors that lurked between dimensions, the first of a new line of sentinels. The void entity remained safely contained, but Sarah knew this was only the beginning. There would be other threats, other seals that needed maintenance. Humanity would need to learn about its new role in the cosmic order. As the first glimmers of sunlight penetrated the depths, Sarah smiled. They would be ready. Legacy of Light. 6 months after the Mariana Trench incident, the Nautilus Research Center had transformed into Earth's first Sentinel Command. Sarah Chen stood at the observation window, her reflection overlaid with crystalline patterns that now permanently marked her skin. The facility housed 12 other humans who had volunteered to merge with crystal matrices, becoming hybrid sentinels like her. Each connection to the crystal network strengthened Earth's defenses against interdimensional threats. Today, they would activate the global monitoring grid. Resonator crystals, carefully grown from the original entity's matrix, would be positioned at strategic points across Earth's oceans. Sarah felt their power humming through her enhanced consciousness. "Grid initialization in 5 minutes," Marcus announced. He'd become the technical director of Sentinel Command, adapting alien crystal technology for human use. The marriage of human innovation and Sentinel knowledge had yielded remarkable advances. Sarah touched the window, watching crystalline patterns ripple across the glass. The resonator's consciousness lived on through her and the network, their merged existence a bridge between two civilizations. They had learned that Earth wasn't the only sealed prison in the galaxy. There were others, each guarded by different Sentinel species. Director Chen, a young Sentinel in training, approached. "We're detecting unusual readings from the Tonga Trench." Sarah smiled. There would always be new challenges, new threats to face, but humanity was no longer alone in facing them. They had inherited an ancient legacy, becoming part of a galactic network of guardians. The crystal patterns across her skin pulsed with soft light as she headed to the command center. The merging of human and Sentinel knowledge had changed her, changed all of them. But it had also given humanity its true place in the cosmos, not just as explorers or colonizers, but as protectors. As the global grid hummed to life, Sarah felt the connection to every crystal, every sentinel, every sealed breach across the planet. The void entities would keep testing their prisons, looking for weaknesses, but the sentinels would be waiting. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe, and they would face whatever horrors it held with both human courage and crystal light.